It's November 21st here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with Ukraine's launch of UK-supplied cruise missiles into Russia. Ukraine has fired a long-range British Storm Shadow missiles at Russian targets for the first time, just a day after launching U.S.-made ATACMS into Russia, which made the U.S. shut down its embassy in Kyiv. A UN General Assembly committee on Wednesday adopted a resolution on North Korean human rights for the 20th consecutive year. Also, for the first time, the regime's public renouncement of the reunification of the two Koreas was mentioned in the annual resolution. The U.S. on Wednesday vetoed a UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, citing it doesn't guarantee an immediate release of hostages held by Hamas. Ukraine fired a long-range British Storm Shadow missiles at targets within Russia for the first time on Wednesday, while the U.S. has decided to give Ukraine anti-personnel landmines on top of allowing the use of its ATACMS missiles in Russia. Our Park Kwon-woo reports.
Ukraine has used UK-supplied long-range missiles for the first time in its war against Russia. According to Reuters, an official speaking on condition of anonymity confirmed that British Storm Shadow cruise missiles with a range of 250 kilometers were launched on Wednesday against targets in Russia. Fragments of the missiles were reportedly found in the Kursk region, where North Korean troops are deployed. The attack comes a day after Ukraine fired U.S. ATACMS missiles for the first time into Russian territory, after their use was approved by U.S. President Joe Biden this week. The British government declined to comment about the use of its long-range missiles, but according to the BBC, the UK's Defence Secretary had been in contact with officials in Ukraine on Tuesday night. The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer had hinted at support for Ukraine during the recent G20 summit in Brazil.
We have stood with Ukraine from the start, and I've been doubling down in my clear message that we need to ensure that Ukraine has what is needed for as long as is needed to win this war against Putin.
Also on Wednesday, the U.S. said it would support Ukraine with anti-personnel landmines in a reversal of its current policy. The decision was followed by backlash from humanitarian organizations over concerns about the threat such weapons pose to civilians. However, the U.S. State Department said the landmines are comparatively safe as they become inert after a period of time. Also on Wednesday, countries including the U.S. temporarily shut their embassies in Kyiv amid the threat of Russian attacks inside Ukraine.
Saw the security alert that went out early this morning, overnight our time. The embassy put that alert out based on a possible threat of a significant attack on Kyiv, something that we take very seriously and led to the temporary change in posture at the embassy.
But the U.S. officials said their embassy will return to normal operations on Thursday. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
A committee under the United Nations has passed a resolution on the human rights issue in North Korea for the 20th year in a row. Our Peunji has the details.
The United Nations Third Committee, which handles human rights and social affairs, has adopted a resolution on North Korean human rights. It was adopted by consensus by 61 countries, including South Korea, at a meeting in New York on Wednesday local time. The committee has been adopting the resolution on the human rights situation in North Korea every year since 2005. This year's resolution not only contains a united message from the international community urging the overall improvement of human rights in North Korea, but also includes concerns about new areas that were not part of previous resolutions. First, it expressed concerns about the possible negative impact the human rights situation could have on separated families, noting that North Korea announced earlier in January that it would no longer pursue reunification with the South. And second, the paper also urged the North to ensure the right to freedom of thought and religion, and the right to freedom of opinion and expression, by reforming all practices and laws that suppress these rights. It also called on the regime to permit the establishment of independent newspapers and other media. South Korea's Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations said during Wednesday's meeting that it's already well known the North provides zero freedom of expression and severe punishment for merely watching South Korean dramas.
It is with a heavy heart, however, that there has been no no improvement, but rather deterioration in North Korea's systematic, widespread, and gross human rights violations, which amount to crimes against humanity.
South Korea's foreign ministry said in a statement that it welcomes the committee's adoption of the resolution and said it hopes discussions on the human rights situation in North Korea will continue to take place actively at the United Nations. 배은지, Arirang News.
Now, a Gaza ceasefire resolution at the UN Security Council failed to pass after a veto from a permanent member, the United States. This is already the fourth time Washington has used its veto power. Our Yisung explains.
A UN Security Council draft resolution was put forward by 10 non-permanent members on Wednesday, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. For a resolution to be adopted, it must receive at least 9 votes in favor, with no vetoes by any of the UNSC permanent members. However, despite receiving 14 votes in favor of the draft resolution, it failed to pass due to 1 veto from a permanent member, the United States. According to the U.S. envoy to the UN, the veto comes as it was believed the draft resolution would not have secured the release of hostages.
We made clear throughout negotiations we could not support an unconditional ceasefire that failed to release the hostages. Because, as this Council has previously called for, a durable end to the war must come with the release of the hostages. These 2 urgent goals are inextricably linked. This resolution abandoned that necessity, and for that reason, the United States could not support it.
The veto was still met with major backlash despite the explanation from the U.S. ambassador to the UN. The draft resolution does demand the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. However, the U.S. felt the language was not strong enough, adding that the ceasefire was not on the condition of the release of hostages. Wood also added that the draft failed to condemn Hamas for the October 7th terrorist attack. Meanwhile, after visiting Beirut, U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein is headed to Israel to continue negotiations on an Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire. He's expected to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday, as the Lebanese government and Hezbollah accepted a U.S.-led draft proposal. However, details of the ceasefire proposal are still unclear, and it remains to be seen whether Israel would also agree to the agreement after Hochstein's visit. 이승재, Arirang News.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has tapped former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker as the next U.S. ambassador to NATO, calling him a strong warrior and loyal patriot. Trump said Whitaker would ensure U.S. interests are advanced and defended, adding that Washington's relationship with NATO will be strengthened. The nomination comes despite Whitaker's background in law enforcement and not foreign policy. He had been considered for Attorney General, but the position was instead given to Matt Gaetz earlier this month. President Yoon Suk-yeol landed in Seoul early this morning after a week in Latin America to attend the APEC and G20 summits. His diplomacy stretched beyond the summit agenda. Our Oh Soo-young wraps up the major outcomes of his trip.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's week-long trip to Latin America featured South Korea's multidimensional diplomacy as he reinforced bilateral and minilateral partnerships to tackle global challenges. Coming at a significant time in geopolitics, with former US President Donald Trump set to return to the White House in January, as well as Russia and North Korea's military cooperation, all eyes were on Yoon's key bilateral summits on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Peru. Amid concerns that a second Trump term could undermine America's network of alliances, the South Korean leader held a trilateral and separate bilateral meetings with US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. To preserve Seoul, Washington and Tokyo's three-way partnership on deterring North Korea and tackling challenges to regional peace and prosperity, the leaders agreed to launch a trilateral secretariat to institutionalize their agreements made at Camp David last year. The South Korean leader also held a rare sit-down with Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first time in 2 years, signalling progress in their relations. Yoon called on Beijing to play a constructive role in squeezing North Korea as the regime's nuclear and missile threat continues to grow. Still, with tensions expected to rise between Washington and Beijing, Yoon made it clear that choosing between its closest ally and biggest trading partner is a false dilemma. He told Brazilian media that whilst Seoul will anchor its foreign policy on the Korea-US alliance, it aims for communication and a constructive partnership with China. Another key outcome of Yoon's trip to Lima was his bilateral summit with Peruvian President Dina Boluarte as he marked his first official trip to a Latin American country. The two sides inked deals on strengthening cooperation on defence, minerals, infrastructure and ICT as comprehensive strategic partners. Yoon also met with the leaders of Brunei and Vietnam for the first time and the Canadian Prime Minister for their sixth summit. During the G20 summit in Brazil, Yoon also held a minilateral meeting with the leaders of MICTA, Mexico, Indonesia, Korea, Turkey and Australia, reaffirming their support for principles of international law, multilateralism and international cooperation amid growing conflicts in the world. Finally, Yoon's multilateral diplomacy aimed to enhance South Korea's role as a global pivotal state, contributing to global growth and governance, leveraging its experience of turning from a war-torn country into an advanced IT powerhouse.
The central themes of the APEC and G20 meetings were promoting inclusivity and growth and building a just world and sustainable planet, both addressing humanity's sustainable future, a goal attainable only through shared growth between advanced and developing economies.
Yoon highlighted Seoul's role as a bridge of prosperity and a green ladder linking developing and advanced economies by sharing its IT solutions for social inclusion, contributions to beat poverty and hunger, and efforts to promote an inclusive green transition. Wrapping up his multilateral summitry, President Yoon assured that South Korea will uphold its commitments and responsibilities, especially as its southern city of Gyeongju hosts the APEC summit next year. He introduced the summit's theme of building a sustainable tomorrow, connect, innovate, prosper. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Rio de Janeiro.
Then now, how successful or fruitful were the APEC summit and the G20 summit on the global level? Let's recap the past with Professor Han Shuttle. Good morning.
Good morning, Dami.
So let's start with the G20 summit over in Rio. Is it safe to say one of the biggest outcomes of this year's edition is the launch of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting and positive step. This G20 summit in particular was hosted, of course, in the Global South with Brazil. Next year, it's apparently scheduled to be hosted by South Africa. And that's a big difference, actually, between the G20, this larger group, and, say, the G7, you know, the smaller group of countries, mainly in the Global North, that meet every year as well. And I think Lula da Silva, the president of Brazil, was very keen to make a statement at this summit that we could see more attention to issues in countries that still struggle for a lot of poverty. So there are some interesting steps in the alliance. Cash transfers for up to 500 million people around the world in developing countries that maybe don't have quite enough to eat. Malnutrition as well among school students is being taken on. School meals for 150 million students has been pledged in support from a variety of countries, as well as some support for small-scale farmers. So the big global NGOs are framing this as a positive step. And they are also calling for it to be a first step, not for it to be a final step. Oxfam in particular is suggesting that there's need for even more investments to get at agriculture itself and to promote more small-scale farming, promote more land rights in developing countries, promote more gender equity. So hopefully this will start a larger conversation on a lot of kinds of more systemic changes as well that could follow this sort of agreement and create more food for people around the world.
Right. Sounds like a tangible, start to the project, a global project. But at the same time, the G20 member countries sounded a note of, caution over protectionism regarding trade ahead of the launch of the incoming Trump administration, didn't they?
You bet, because Donald Trump, the incoming U.S. president, is already talking about tariffs, in some cases very steep tariffs, particularly on goods imported into the U.S. From China. And that prompted Chinese leader Xi Jinping to have a series of one-on-one meetings at the summit with presidents and prime ministers from a variety of countries, really urging them, I think lobbying them or pleading with them not to take the same kinds of protective steps, so to speak. In a way, it was kind of odd to see China, a communist country still, out there at the forefront of trying to position itself as a free trade country, as a country following what we would call neoliberalism. So they're really trying to, I think, protect their own industries, their own export industries, by trying to maintain better arrangements with other countries if they're going to have a less favorable arrangement with the U.S. So definitely the possibility, or the likelihood now, or inevitability, I guess, of the second Trump administration was a kind of shadow that was hanging over this summit.
Right, China trying to fit in a rare move. Now, of course, Ukraine's sovereignty and the denunciation of Russia-North Korea military collaboration also topped the summit. But Russia's foreign minister, who attended the meeting on behalf of Putin, left the summit with a stronger warning about the war in Ukraine. Now, it looks like Russia is nowhere close to ending its crisis, doesn't it?
Yeah, the crisis between Russia and Ukraine, which in many ways involves a lot of other countries, including G20 countries, was another dark cloud, you could say, over this summit. And, the Russia over the last few days has put out a new doctrine, supposedly, on its, prospective use of nuclear weapons, something that it's been threatening ever since it invaded Ukraine as a kind of blackmail in February of 2022. And what they're saying now is, even if there are conventional attacks on Russia, basically attacks on Russia with non-nuclear weapons, such as the long-range missiles provided by the U.S. that Ukraine has been firing in to Russia this week, and Ukraine's also now been firing in missiles provided by Britain as well. Russia is saying, and they're warning in advance, that they are going to treat any attack on their territory, even if it's not a nuclear attack, if the attack is coming and aided by a state that is a nuclear state, then Russia will treat that state aiding them as also a party to the attack, a joint assault on Russia. So that's a kind of ominous statement. It's not necessarily a threat from Russia that they're actually going to respond to that kind of attack with nuclear weapons, but it suggests that Russia itself, as its own territory starts to get attacked by Ukraine, that they will consider at least escalating further, and possibly escalating beyond what would be seen as proportionate. So that's an unresolved point of tension that really got no further in terms of progress at the summit, unfortunately.
Professor Shadow, before I let you go, a notable happening during the summit this year, U.S. President Joe Biden was tardy and he missed the so-called, family photo of the summit with the world leaders. It was unusual that the world leaders, didn't wait for Biden, considering Washington's status in the international arena. Is it because he's on the way out of the White House?
Well, it's unusual, and it's a bit odd. It wasn't just Joe Biden in the end. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni also missed that first photo, and almost opened up the question, who was snubbing whom here? Were certain world leaders unhappy with the way the summit was going and they weren't showing up for the photo? Or on the other hand, were they the ones getting snubbed since the rest of the crowd didn't wait for them to come? I think it was a real headache, actually, for the host of the summit, Brazil's President Lula da Silva. He ended up scheduling a second photo shoot. It was overnight our time, and they did take that second picture with all of them there. But President da Silva of Brazil also canceled the final press conference where they would typically announce the results of the G20 summit. So even though there was that food security initiative that came out of the G20 this time around, it seemed that on all the larger issues in terms of trade, in terms of also Israel-Palestine, in terms of Russia and Ukraine, and even the positioning, but maybe in a way a kind of tension between some of the countries of the global north and the countries of the global south, it seems like all these fault lines or fissures are going to be lingering into next year's summit. So the leaders of South Africa have their work cut out for them as they get ready to host next year's G20.
Professor Shadow, thanks so much for your time and your insight this morning. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me, Dami. You too. Take care.
Good morning, I'm Kim Xiang, and this is The World Now. Now, violence has escalated in the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, with the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner saying Wednesday that at least 150 people were killed and some 100 injured in the past week alone. Now, difficult conditions continue in Haiti, with some 80% of the Haitian capital still controlled by well-armed gangs, where civilians are routinely being targeted. Around 20,000 people have also been forced to flee their homes since a coalition of gangs began pushing for total control of the country's capital on November 11th. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk expressed grave concerns, saying that some 4 million residents of Port-au-Prince are practically being held hostage by an alliance of Haitian gangs controlling all the main roads in and out of the capital. Now, while a Kenya-led international force has been deployed in Haiti to support the Haitian military and police, the UN Human Rights Office estimates some 700,000 people are now displaced across the country. It also said that up to Wednesday, 4,544 deaths have been caused by gang violence, with another 2,060 people injured. A powerful storm known as a bomb cycle slammed the northwest United States and parts of Canada in Tuesday night to early Wednesday, leaving some 650,000 without power and at least 2 people dead. Schools in western parts of Washington state have temporarily cancelled classes as falling trees killed at least 2 people in the state overnight. A bomb cyclone occurs when a storm rapidly intensifies over a short period of time due to a rapid fall in central air pressure. Now, gusts of up to 124 kilometers per hour were recorded in Washington state, while the coast of British Columbia saw winds of up to 163 kilometers per hour. Now, in Washington state, over 650,000 homes or businesses lost power by Wednesday morning, while 140,000 were cut off in British Columbia and more than 24,000 were left without power in California. The cyclone is predicted to move towards northern California, with strong winds and heavy rains expected to continue through Friday in the affected regions. India continues to see hazardous levels of air pollution, leading the capital's environment minister to order half of its government workers to work from home on Wednesday. According to IQ Air data on Wednesday morning, New Delhi ranked as the world's most polluted city with a very unhealthy level of 227 on the Air Quality Index. Delhi Environment Minister Gopal Rai said that 50% of the Delhi government staff will be working from home, with the exception of those working in departments providing essential services. All schools in Delhi have also been temporarily shut down to prevent pollution-related illnesses, while Stage 4 pollution curbs have been imposed, banning operation of trucks and vehicles. Now, lastly, a woman has been charged with hate crime in the U.S. after a video recording an altercation at a cafe in Illinois went viral. 64-year-old Alexandra Shustakiewicz has been charged with 2 counts of hate crime, which are a Class 4 felony, and a single count of misdemeanor disorderly conduct after she was seen in an altercation with a Palestinian man and his pregnant wife, attempting to pour a drink on the man and raising her hand to assault the victim. Now, police said that Shustakiewicz confronted the man before his wife began recording the encounter. Illinois Downers Grove Chief of Police Michael DeVries said that the assailant's behavior is not and will never be tolerated in our community.
It feels more comfortable this morning. Daily lows in Seoul are about 4 degrees higher than at the same time yesterday. And the capital woke up to the spotty rain, which will expand to the rest of the central regions and northern Jeollabuk-do province. The amount will be less than 5 millimeters through late this afternoon. But the main issue for the weather will be the dust levels. The capital area and Chungcheongdo provinces will have bad air quality all day, while some of the southern provinces and west of Gangwon-do will see dust levels rising in the afternoon. But it should not be bad enough to be deeply concerned. Now checking on today's highs now. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 5 degrees higher this afternoon. Seoul gets up to 14 degrees. Daegu and Gwangju topping out at 15 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Skies should get sunnier for southern provinces. Now morning lows drop down to norms tomorrow, but highs will remain in double digits through early next week, with sunnier skies in the forecast from Friday. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And that wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.
사라져가는 사랑했던 사람들도 차가운 새벽 공기에 취해보는 오늘도 어김없이 찾아주었던 잃어버린 것 같던 너의 기억이 눈물 속 다시 만나면
completely new. But something anyone can relate with. Flawlessly made. And tears that go with it. K-drama. Korea is coming at you with another story to tell.
Bring a new type of news show. New insights, new styles, and new topics every single day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Thursday, November 21st here in Seoul. I'm Songjin, and welcome to News Generation. Today we're joined by Kwon Ju-yeon.
Good morning.
Good morning, and Kang Won-ju.
Thanks for inviting me.
Welcome back. Now both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So we're going to begin with our keyword news. Today's keyword is anywhere. New data from travel platform Skyscanner reveals that for Koreans traveling between December 21st and 31st this year, the most popular choice isn't a specific city or country. It's actually anywhere. Now, this option uses the platform search feature to recommend destinations ranked by price and date. And following anywhere, the most booked destinations were Taiwan's Taipei, Thailand's Bangkok, Japan's Sapporo, Hong Kong, and Vietnam's Nha Trang. And as the year draws to a close, many people are actually planning their final vacations. So I want to ask our panelists, what about you? Do you have any plans to travel at the end of the year, or is there any place you want to go that's on your wish list before we say goodbye to 2024, or do you just want to go anywhere?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I'm a P type of person with the MBTI, having no plans at all. So it would be so hard for anyone to see me planning for anything. So, but these days my wish list has been updated. I want to visit Jeju Island. It's not far at all. And also, I want to enjoy their weather, their nature, and just relax myself there.
Yeah, they're warmer than Seoul, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also, this anywhere, I love it. Like,
you love it.
Like P type of person like me, we're so lazy to like choose a destination at all. If they choose for me, then I can start planning vacations since then. So I think it's a great option to use it.
Well, hope you have time to visit Jeju Island before the end of the year.
I hope so, yeah.
Now, what about you, Jian?
Well, I was an absolute J who likes to plan every single thing. But after having 2 kids, I think I changed to P right now. Well, recently I found myself planning trips abroad, not with a specific destination in mind, but by searching for anywhere that fits my schedule. So it's sort of a refreshing way to discover places I might not have considered otherwise. And this approach has taken me to Japan, Bali, and even Jeju Island, each offering its own unique charm. Plus, you know, there's immense joy in the process of planning a trip, imagining the possibilities and adventures ahead. So there's something exciting about letting the journey guide you rather than the destination. So who knew anywhere could be everywhere.
Right. So is there a specific city or country that you like to visit soon, Jian?
The UK.
UK. Okay. So for Jeju Island for Bunju and the United Kingdom for Jian. And that was our keyword news for this Thursday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. It's Thursday when we usually talk about the Korean wave and the global appeal of Korean culture. But today we're switching gears slightly to explore a debate that's gained attention around the world. Take a look at the screen to find out more.
Disneyland recently introduced a Lightning Lane Premier Pass, which lets pass holders skip lines for popular attractions without selecting the ride or specific time in advance. While marketed as a time-saving convenience, it sparked a heated debate about fairness and the idea of buying time with money.
Right, so this is a timely topic with the college entrance exam in Korea now over and the end of the year season approaching. Amusement parks are a popular destination for many people. But with so many planning to visit, I want to ask you, what are some inconveniences or challenges that you've encountered when visiting amusement parks at this time of the year?
So with many planning to visit, there are some challenges we've got to face. Crowds, expensive tickets or long queues, there's always something to navigate. For example, when I recently visited Seoul-land on a busy Saturday, I faced a 3-hour wait.
3 hours?
To park in order to find the right parking lot. There wasn't any application or system in order to check available parking spaces, so we had to queue without knowing how long it would take. But on the bright side, ticket prices were pretty reasonable with card and mobile network discounts. We managed the long queues by preparing ahead of time. I brought some snacks and small activities to keep the kids entertained while waiting before getting insane and crazy, which made the rides feel even more rewarding in the end for all of them. And in my opinion, with a little planning and patience, these minor inconveniences don't overweigh the fun and memories you can create during a day out. And it's all about embracing the experience, right?
Well, can I ask you how long you actually waited for the rides, Jiyeon?
I think around 30 minutes or 1 hour.
That's not a short amount of time.
Indeed, indeed.
Right, so definitely if you visit amusement parks at this time of the year, there is a waiting time, especially when you visit the weekends when there are a lot of visitors. Now, Moonju, did you also experience something similar as Jiyeon mentioned? What about you?
Something similar but quite different. Personally, I'm not a big fan of amusement parks.
Oh, why?
Just because I get fearful so easily, hopping on all the rides.
Like roller coasters?
Yeah, theme parks. It's very scary for me. So my personal problem is me only having two hands to carry my friends' stuff while they're enjoying their thrilling moments, and my poor stamina. But I do still agree with Juhyun that the biggest problem would be the long queues for both parking vehicles and also the long lines for the rides. And I still remember the times when I was waiting more for than I was actually enjoying our ride stuff. So I think that's the biggest problem. And when I visited Universal Studios at LA, I actually took advantage of the mobile application that tells me the waiting time. So it was very helpful, and I think most of theme parks are utilizing those mobile applications. So it could be one tip for everyone to use it. Yeah.
So a large crowd, which naturally leads to a longer waiting time, is probably the biggest inconvenience that visitors experience when they visiting these parks, which once again leads to Disneyland introducing this top-tier Lightning Lane Premier Pass. Now, it's available only to guests at selected hotels and comes with quite a hefty price tag, reaching up to $450 plus tax, depending on the park and date. And I want to mention that that's about 30 times more expensive than the cheapest pass. And similar premium services have already been introduced at other parks as well, such as Universal Studios that Moonju visited, as well as Lotte World and Everland here in Korea. So starting off our discussion today, what are your general thoughts on these passes?
Well, fast-track passes are allocated to only a small portion of guests who are visiting the amusement park theme park. And even those using them still have to queue for a certain period of time. It's simply a tiered service system where customers pay different prices for different experiences, and such services can be essential for people who may struggle to stand in long lines for extended periods.
So you kind of agree on the purpose of these passes, whether it's for those who are having problems standing in a line for a long time, and also for those who are just wanting to pay more to not wait and skip the queues.
That's right.
Then what about you, Moonju? What are your thoughts on these passes?
Yeah, it is definitely true that we need this kind of passes for those who are having a hard time standing on the line. But it's actually offered at the most theme parks at this point of moment right now. And the concept of this pass is buying time with money, right? So which is a great example of materialism. And also it shows the negative aspect of capitalism that we're living in the society right now. So we should never forget though that these amusement parks are primarily designed for children and young students, and they're not in a good age to be exposed to this kind of idea that money can buy anything. So I think it's a careful point, a cautious point that we have to always look out for.
So you're kind of worried about showing students, or especially children, that you can kind of buy time with money. It may kind of lead or kind of teach them that about these materialistic perspectives or thoughts that you can buy time with money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Then Jiyeon, you're a parent yourself. You have 2 kids. Are you also concerned about this? Do you agree that this could have some sort of an influence on children, thinking that we can basically buy anything with money, for example, time?
Well, that's a good point indeed. Well, but I reckon amusement parks are a luxury itself, not a necessity. So simply visiting one can already leave some people feeling isolated, feeling excluded from this culture. Well, fast-track passes are no different from other tiered services we easily accept, such as faster taxi dispatch options that we have in Korea on applications, and single delivery choices on food platforms. We pay 1,000 or 2,000 extra fee for that, or the price difference between City View and Ocean View hotel rooms. So this fast-track pass is not a unique issue.
So you think that the skipping and queue services or these fast-track services are already available, or there are a lot of services being provided, but why this particular pass amusement parks? And I think another point you made is that we don't really often visit amusement parks regularly. It's kind of like 2 or 3 times a year. So this may not have a big influence on teaching students or kind of implementing this idea of materialism.
That's right.
Towards students, right? Then Moonju, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely it's not a unique issue here. But here's where the difference comes from is that for example, the faster taxi dispatch, you have to pay the fee anyways, but you're adding just the 3,000 won, for example, and you can have an option to select it or not. But this amusement park, it is in fact already a ticketed facilities, meaning that every visitor has already paid for the general admissions that, for a certain amount of money. And this also would mean that all individuals are then now customers who have the right to receive the same quality of service. So I think this is a point that we have to always remember with the difference between the faster dispatch of taxi and the amusement park tickets.
And I think that this Disneyland Pass specifically has become controversial because you have to pay much more when compared to 3,000 won when you are trying to use this fast-track taxi, because $450, it's almost equivalent to more than 600,000 Korean won, which is once again 30 times more expensive than the cheapest pass that Disneyland offers. Now, this debate brings up a larger question. We kind of mentioned this earlier, but what do you think about the idea of buying time with money?
That's a very good question, and a controversial question at the same time. Well, I reckon time holds different levels of significance for everybody. For example, someone who visits frequently and someone who has traveled a long way, maybe from the Jeju-do Island, for a rare visit, may naturally have different priorities, different perspective and expectations for the theme park. So choosing to pay extra to enjoy more attractions, more rides, is a personal decision. There are options like this offer flexibility, enabling visitors to customize their experiences according to their needs and circumstances. In this sense, the concept of buying time with money can be seen as a practical and a reasonable choice for those who value it.
So you think that this is a personal choice, whether to pay more, to skip the line, because some people who are visiting the amusement parks, they may put more value on time, saving time by paying more money. Then Moonju, do you agree with this perspective? What do you think?
Yes and no. Personal choices, it's definitely personal choices. But if you think about it, these days, resources that were all provided equally to every individual in the past has been getting depleted. So water bottles, for example, it's been a while since we started paying for it. And so I feel like the next deal up, it's going to be time. And then if we like move on at this pace, we might have to purchase the air or like other necessary resources in the very near future. And I think this is another cautious point again to think about it when we like discuss this kind of topic.
And right, because before there weren't these passes because people all had to wait in line equally. Now we're seeing the introduction of these passes, and these passes are becoming more pricier. So I get your point there. Now, so far we've listened from our panelists expanding our discussion. We also asked our viewers beforehand if they would pay for skip the line services and when. And here's what some of them said. If we look at our viewers' comments, Benny D97 says, I would like to pay at least $3 to $5 if I don't want to wait because of time and I'm going to an important meeting. Joseph I N8I says, if it's for an official matter, yes, the amount would depend on the importance of the situation. RKZLTV, no, because other people's time is just as valuable as mine. So we can see that the opinion is being divided among our viewers as well. But for those who are for this pass, I think that they're saying that this is a personal option. Like it's up to you whether you want to pay more in order to save time. So I want to also ask our panelists: have there been any moments in your life when you thought that it was worthy to pay more just to save your time?
Well, absolutely. Well, you know, there is a food delivery application in Korea. Sometimes I pay an extra 1,000 won for the faster delivery service on a food app, and it arrives in record time. Honestly, it felt like a luxury by paying 1,000 won, having hot food so quickly, and worth every penny. And also, there was a time I needed to receive some important documents, paper urgently to finish a task on time, and I used a same-day delivery service. We call this quick service in Korean. That is English indeed. But I paid extra to ensure they arrived quickly. So thanks to speedy service, I managed to complete everything without delay. So hot food and quick documents, money well spent. Pat, pat, pat for me.
So hot food and delivery services. What about you?
Definitely faster dispatch taxis. You know, I always plan ahead, but time doesn't work as I plan, right?
Right.
So I have to like dispatch, spend 3,000 won, and some sort of like the extra time that I spent, I have to somehow like pay for it. So I guess I bought some time with money, but I think it's worth it because I got much better, looking good. So I think it's worth spending time and money sometimes, yeah.
I see. So for more on this debate on Disneyland and amusement parks premium fast track passes, we're now going to invite an expert to our talks after a short break.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Shin Eun-kyung, Assistant Professor of Sociology at Korea University in Seoul. Welcome, Professor Shin, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, Professor, amusement parks aren't the only places offering time-saving services, as we mentioned earlier. So why do you think these specific passes have become so controversial?
The controversy stems from the fact that premium passes challenges the notions of fairness and justice. While they offer convenience to those who can afford them, they alienate others by creating a two-sided experience, one for the wealthy, another for the rest. These services often allow those who can pay to jump the queue, effectively taking advantages over others who have waited longer. When high-paying customers cut the line, this service automatically creates disadvantages for the others. They have to wait longer. Money should not override basic principles of equity, where everyone should be treated equally regardless of their financial means. Most importantly, in a digital age, as we mentioned earlier, waiting in a queue is unnecessary inconvenience. We can actually don't need to stand in a long lines waiting for something. Companies can use digital queuing systems to alert customers by a simple notification when their turn is about 5 minutes away. This would save visitors from wasting their time in uncomfortable conditions, rain or shine. Providing such convenient solutions should be a basic responsibility of the companies. Ignoring these options offering time-saving benefits to high-paying customers is unfair, where companies neglect their basic duty.
Interesting indeed. Professor Shin, so what do you think has prompted companies to introduce these premium passes in the first place?
Premium passes are often driven by a business model that charges higher fees for enhanced service, a strategy commonly seen in various industries. For example, first-class seats in an airplane offer widely accepted a different pricing system, justified by the tangible benefit of more physical space. In such cases, the added cost align with a clear and specific value position. However, creating time-saving services at amusement park or similar settings operates differently. As mentioned earlier, this passage shifts the burden of unnecessary time wasting onto other customers, undermining democratic value of fairness and equity. Unlike first-class sittings, where experience doesn't negatively affect economy passengers, these passes allow the few buy time at expenses of others' time. This type of system enhances social inequality, raising questions about the ethical implications of such practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Professor, our last question today for you is, when do you think buying the time with money services are kind of justified? And how can we create an environment where these services are accepted without the backlash?
Time is the most finite human resource. Buying time with money service can be justified only when they do not fundamentally damage others. Only when the service added value without diminishing the quality of experience for other users. The idea of buying time with money is inherently risky and must be approached with caution. Imagine a hospital scenario where two patients are equally critical, but doctors prioritize the one who paid more while the other has to wait. Such a system would be deeply unjust, as time is valuable for everyone, regardless of their financial status. On a personal level, paying to save time can be reasonable. However, when companies implement policies that treat some people's time as more valuable while forcing others to waste theirs, they cross a line. This approach not only undermines fairness but also deeply violates the fundamental principle of democracy. For time-buying services to be justified, they must meet two criteria. They should not disadvantage others. They must offer clear value without perpetuating systematic inequality. For instance, providing optional upgrade on an enhanced experience like private tours without delaying or diminishing the standard service for others is acceptable. Anything less risks creating a system where fairness is sacrificed for profit, both ethically and socially unacceptable.
All right, Professor Shin, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So ending off very briefly, what are your thoughts on this after this entire discussion on time and money?
I think it's not fair to call every profit-driven idea greedy. Charging for things that used to be free can reflect progress, especially when it leads to innovation and convenience. So paid services often enhance experiences and provide value that wasn't available before. So let's embrace a balance between, innovation and your cost as well.
Balancing. What about you?
Yeah, I think this kind of services are always needed sometimes, but I think the most important thing is we have to aspire for a society with more considerations towards others. Yeah.
All right, so if you have any thoughts or if you would like to leave a comment on today's debate, please watch NewsGen's episode and leave a comment below. And that's all from us today, but NewsGen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Kwon Ji-yeon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and Kang Moon-ju.
My pleasure.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
AI What are some dishes you should try in Korea?
Recommended food to eat in Korea are Korean barbecue, fried chicken, kimchi, kimbap, kukbap.
에이, 이걸로는 부족하지. 진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까? K-바비큐?